right, ladies and gentlemen, let's put the spotlight on all the big announcements that were made by Apple CEO Tim Cook from the iconic Steve Jobs Theater in Cupertino in California. And of all the announcements that were made, there were key themes that played out. Number one, Apple's big focus on health features, Apple Intelligence. There was also a big focus around security as well. And of course, Apple wants to actively keep contributing to the creators community. In fact, that's something that was the big takeaway, at least for us. We were tracking the event live last night. In fact, Tim Cook also spoke about the iPhone lineup, and he said that the iPhone 17 lineup is unlike anything that Apple has ever created. He also stated that Apple has just unveiled its highly anticipated fall lineup on highlighting thinner designs. In fact, the technology has become smarter and higher price tags. In fact, the central product of the show was the iPhone 17 Air, which essentially is the latest addition to the overall lineup. This is Apple's lightest and slimmest iPhone to date, and that's the big moat. It also features a durable titanium body. It has a good battery life as well. Other than that, there are camera enhancements as well. So design is a big thing with the iPhone 17 Air. But let's also talk about some of the other announcements that were made. Well, then there was the AirPods Pro 3 to offer better sound quality and live translation feature, and the Apple Watch Series 11 that now includes AI-based alerts for blood pressure risks without changing the price. But let's talk about the star of the show, the iPhone 17 Pro. It features an all-new design, as you can see on your television screens. In fact, this is a major redesign exercise that Apple has taken since 2017. But that's the phone's not just about looks. Well, it's also powered by the A19 Pro, which is by far the most advanced iPhone processor ever. It's also the largest battery ever that's been made to an iPhone, that's been introduced to an iPhone. The battery is at 5,000 mAh. Now remember, the 5,000 mAh battery, this credential is reserved for Android phones usually. But Apple providing this much battery, well, that says a lot about the kind of focus that Apple is going to make, given the fact that it has 39 hours of just video playback. It also boasts of a good camera system, but most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, Apple reportedly also raised prices of the iPhone Pro Max for the very first time since 2017. But is that likely due to the tariff impact? How to read into these announcements? Well, we'll go to a special guest who's joining us on the show. But let's first take a look at what Apple CEO Tim Cook said after these launches were done.
Apple design has always been fundamental to who we are and what we do. For us, design goes beyond just how something looks or feels. Design is also how it works. This philosophy guides everything we do, from the magical listening experience with AirPods to the ways your Apple Watch keeps you healthy, active, and connected, to how iPhone helps you with so many things throughout your day. It's also true of our new software design featuring our innovative liquid glass. It brings fluidity, vitality, and flexibility to the things you do every day. It's absolutely gorgeous and delivers a more intuitive and delightful user experience. We bring so much care and consideration to every detail. From every product, service, and technology we create to the welcoming nature of our retail stores, design is at the core of everything we do, taking the biggest leap ever for iPhone.
All right. In fact, ladies and gentlemen, we spoke with Ray Wong, the principal analyst and founder of Constellation Research, and here's what he had to say on the announcements that Tim Cook made last night.
I think people are really excited about the iPhone 17 Air because of the sleek, thin design. At 5.5 millimeters, this is really kind of exciting. It actually paves the way for the future. If Apple wants to get into a foldable, that's probably going to be a form factor that's going to carry for some time. But I think other people are excited by the fact of the 48 megapixel camera, the 24 megapixel in terms of what's happening on the front cameras, and of course, getting 2 terabytes of storage on the iPhone 17 Pro Max. That's going to be a huge improvement. But there are other things. People trust Apple with their safety, with their privacy, and with their data, which means they have permission to carry the healthcare aspects of all the things from heart monitoring and the ability to get to all the kind of health features that customers are going to demand in the future. And the watches with 5G and satellite and the AirPod 3 with live translation and heart monitoring, I think those are going to be big big items that customers are looking for that are going to drive the upgrade cycle. The AirPod 3 with live translation, that is the big feature. The ability to actually have longer battery life is nice. The ability to fit.
That's Ray Wong giving his take on the announcements that Apple made late last night. But joining us live now is Tarun Pathak. He's a tech expert at Counterpoint Research. Tarun, thank you very much for taking the time out and speaking to us here on ET Now. Now, let me bring your attention to the fact that Apple was essentially trading in the red after these announcements were made by Tim Cook. What does it really mean? Are investors unimpressed by what Tim Cook calls the best ever lineup that Apple has ever presented?
I think yes. So if you look at from the announcement point of view, the big key takeaway from this particular announcement has been the design. So if you look at from the design perspective, it's a big leap from coming something from Apple at 5.6 mm. If you look at from the iPhone Air perspective, there is a lot of engineering that goes behind that particular device. And especially on the Pro series, we have seen the cameras pumped up. So obviously from the hardware perspective, these devices are the most powerful iPhones lineup yet. But from the stock market point of view, I think the expectations are more or less on the AI side of things, which was not much spoken. But I think for AI, Apple still has some time because AI is a useful feature, but people are not entirely buying their smartphones only from the AI perspective. So I think there is still some time for Apple to get things right on the AI side of things.
Right. Tarun, so let me take that question and that point forward and talk about the AI features that Apple announced late last night. And of course, many say already, they have been saying that Apple's been late to the AI party. That's the view that many have held. So on the basis of what was announced last night in terms of AI features in camera or live translation feature across its devices are concerned, and why are investors unimpressed with respect to Apple's AI strategy?
Yes, so two things here. So if you look at from the Apple's point of view, live translation in our research is among the top two features which people are using from AI perspective, and Apple is already addressing. In fact, a lot of features that people use on camera, you can already see on the Apple Intelligence point of view. But from the investor's perspective, they are likely to look into the long-term strategy point of view, like 5 years down the line or 6 years down the line. And a lot of focus is on actually on the Siri rather than anything else, because we are moving into an agentic world. So I think from the investor's point of view, what they are looking into is some kind of partnership or an approach from long-term perspective. But from the users and the certain features, we believe some of them are already there. What we have seen even on the last year side of things, the strategy with the private cloud compute, especially on the device versus on the cloud, the strategy on paper is already there. It is now about more on the execution side of things and alignment with the overall ecosystem side of things. That is where investor will be more or less interested to see what is coming ahead. So for example, something in China, which are the partners they are going to partner with if they have to bring that intelligence on the device versus on the cloud. So that's something which investors are looking forward to. But from the user perspective,
Right.
they're still more than happy to have these kind of features that are already here with the existing phones.
All right, so you're essentially stating that these features that Apple introduced, at least some of them are already available in the market. But let's also talk about the pricing of these products in terms of, what does that really indicate about Apple's plans to navigate tariffs and yet remain competitive, especially in markets like China and India?
Right. So if you look at from the pricing perspective, there has been some change, right? So I think the best thing what they have done is to start with the 256 gigabit of the memory storage. So in fact, if you look at from the country perspective, you are
Santosh,
almost
can I?
you are not seeing anything upgraded in terms of the pricing from the Indian perspective. But globally, I think there is a new model which is here getting into picture, which is $100 expensive than your the previous plus side of things. But if you look at from that point of view as well, they have also upgraded the memory side of things, which is now starting at 256 gigabit. Tariff, yes, they are playing their role, but what we are seeing them as more of a distraction in the long-term play of things. But the headwinds, if you look at from the forex point of view, I think Apple also highlighted in the previous earnings that they are not seeing a lot of forex headwinds currently, especially in the Q2 that happened. So we are not seeing that much of impact that has happened. But a lot of this pricing also takes into account the new features that Apple gets into their devices. So, for example, the semiconductor content within the devices is increasing. So, for example, what we have seen in the year, you have a great vertical integrated chip stack at play. So, for example, you have iPhone A19 Pro, you have N1, and you have also the new C1X modem, which means you have more semiconductor content going inside the phone, and also some of the components year on year, their pricing
Right.
has been going up. So that has been
Right.
factored in our analysis.
All right. Tarun, let me also ask you about what CEO Tim Cook essentially said. He said that this lineup was unlike that consumers have ever seen. But has Apple truly moved the needle on innovation? So whether you talk about the design language that has seen some change in terms of the AI features, you're not very impressed. But what about the design language that Apple has brought about? And of course, this strategic introduction of the Air model. What do you think about that? Are these significant enough changes for consumers to upgrade?
So if you look at from the Apple's point of view, so there is one set of consumer which is iPhone consumer, right? So for them, it will be a big upgrade if they are coming from N-2 or N-3. And a lot of the discussion, what we have seen on the social media yesterday, people were debating that they are coming from, let's say, iPhone 14 or 13. It will be a big upgrade for them. And especially if you look at from the other mature markets point of view, you are getting a very healthy trade-in on their devices. So one side, the Apple user base, it's an upgrade year on year. They are going to upgrade onto their devices. But from the point of view, from the first time buyers into the Apple ecosystem, what they are predominantly looking into, let's say something in the Pro series, the cameras are the latest and the greatest, which will attract them. And obviously, one point on the security side of things, which is like getting in an ecosystem which is more secure and stable. The other thing from a design point of view, if you look at the software, is something where a lot of work is happening both on the Android and the iOS camp. The things are changing very fast over there. So that is something which is already happening. And from the Air perspective, a lot of people are now looking at smartphones as an extension of their identity, and design is playing a great part over there. So 71% of the consumers that we interviewed last quarter, they said design is an integral part of their decision
Right.
making when it comes to the smartphone. So I think design plays an
Right, Tarun.
important role, but then
Right,
internals
so
of the phone
design
is
is an
equally important.
integral part, Tarun, but
Yeah.
is this convincing enough for consumers to upgrade? Well, that remains to be seen. But let me also ask you about the company's India strategy. We've seen the kind of pressure that Donald Trump has made on the company's top executive, CEO Tim Cook, and asked him to manufacture in America and make America great again. Will Apple or will the company continue to build phones for the India market in India and for the US market in India?
So our supply chain checks are indicating that they are going to do it because a couple of reasons. The world is moving beyond China, so China one strategy is here to stay. And the other thing is whatever Apple has done over the past couple of years in India, that supply chain is more or less very resilient. So the geopolitical shift or whatever we have seen in form of tariff was more or less of a distraction for a company as big as Apple. So whatever we are checking up in our supply chain with respect to ramping up factories or the assembly line, things are already there. And we believe that the contribution of the iPhones from India is going to increase year on year. Last year, it was at 18% across the overall, like if we look at from the overall scheme of things from Apple
Right.
iPhone manufacturing. This year, we
Right.
think that number is going to cross to almost like 26 or 27%.
26 or 27% here in India is something that Apple will cross, and you're
Yes,
suggesting, Tarun, that
of the entire
production target
iPhones that
here
are
in
made
India will remain
worldwide. Yes.
right. So that will remain intact despite any kind of disruptions that the company might be seeing globally, geopolitically as well. Well, on that note, thank you very much for taking the time out and giving us this perspective on Apple's latest launches. What do they really mean for consumption? And of course, where does Apple stand as far as its India market is concerned? And of course, on that very important point about tariffs too. Thank you very much, Tarun, once again.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's shift our focus to the other big story today. Urban Company's 1900 crore IPO saw a strong reception from investors as it got fully subscribed on day one. Overall, the issue got subscribed over 3 times, while retail portion saw near 7 times subscription. In fact, the QIB portion was subscribed over 1x, while NII portion was subscribed over 4x. And meanwhile, we are also learning that small towns are leading the way as far as smartphone sales are concerned, and that's the word that's coming in from Samsung Senior Vice President MX Business, Raju Pullan. We spoke to him yesterday, and he says that Tier 3 and 4 towns are seeing double-digit growth as compared to single-digit growth that the company is factoring in so far as the festive season is concerned. Let's listen into what else did he have to say.